All right, Sean, for today's word of the day, I am choosing reworking verb. Now, reworking is pretty universal. It's just anytime you go back to something. But in this case, reworking in Magic is the process of changing the actions, procedures, and steps of a spell to cater to either one's own situation or to work with ingredients that have been substituted or that are missing. So if you need to just adapt a spell to some other way, we rework it. Reworking works hand in hand with substitution because sometimes when you substitute ingredients, you can no longer use the same processes done in the spell. So every ingredient has its own kind of ways and particular methods it needs to function. So, reworking.
Reworking.
You haven't even read that?
Wait, what are you doing with the book?
So he has the confidence to finish the story.
Hear now the words of the witches.
This is Kevin, and welcome to Words of the Witches, the Charmed podcast that will guide you through the lesser-known published material in the Charmed universe and decide how it fits into the grand narrative of the TV series.
Okay, spell worders, welcome to Words of the Witches, episode 106. I'm Kevin, your resident Charmed resource.
And I'm Sean, and I just love children's storybooks.
Yeah, we are doing the Illustrated Storybook, Charmed the Illustrated Storybook, Redux, because I've covered this once before, but I know, gasp, but it was my first ever read through. It's the day it came out, my initial reaction reading it for the first time. So this is now after I have time to process it and think about it and really, get into the details. I also didn't want to give too much away then either because it was brand new. I wanted to encourage people to buy it themselves and go read it. I didn't want to give it all away right away on the day it came out because that's not nice.
That's not nice.
So now we're going to go through it and we're going to talk about it and really, analyze it. So cool.
So I have a question for you. I just noticed this on the cover. Has there always been this extra P flare on top of the Charmed? I've never noticed that before.
P flare.
Above the Charmed where it says Charmed, there's this little.
That's the Triform. That's what that's my tattoo. That's what's in my tattoo.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's only been on marketing for it and commercials for it, but it's always been there. Not on everything. But it's never been used in the series itself, but it has been used in the marketing since day one. Yeah.
You know how my thoughts are. I don't remember things all the time.
Yeah, because one time you asked me, I'm surprised you don't have a Charm tattoo. I'm like, I do. That symbol right there, that's what my tattoo is. Because I didn't want to be like everybody else and get a triquetra because that's basic.
Oh.
No offense to anybody who has a triquetra tattoo because that's a really great symbol, but I wanted something that was different.
It shows here that 10 people who were listening just dropped off. That was really
rude. No, I love your triquetra tattoos. I do. So, okay. So yeah, this was Charmed the Illustrated Storybook, published. Well, actually, it was originally scheduled for release on September 6th, 2022, but was pushed back to October 4th, 2022. So a little over a year ago. It is written by Paul REDUX with artwork by Ria Maria Lee and published by Insight Kids. This cover is really nice. I think it's very telling. It's Prue, Pepper, and Phoebe as little children with the floating book of shadows in front of them and a light pouring through the stained glass window with a tri-horn over the charm, Sean. I used to call it a P3 rose flower or P3 flower because it looked kind of like petals and smoke.
Oh, it does. Aww.
Yeah. Before we get into this, I'm going to do my power play moment for the day too.
Okay.
It's all very with the theme because we're revisiting this again. I actually have two copies because I bought one, and when I interviewed Paul REDUX before we started this season, he actually sent me a copy too.
Oh, Paul.
Yeah. I was hoping he would have signed it for me first, but yeah. So power play.
Power play
is resurrection. And resurrection is the rare power to either bring oneself or others back to life after being killed or vanquished. So just like we're bringing back life to this Illustrated Storybook.
Nice.
And it has been used in the series quite a bit by different beings. Genies can do it through the use of a wish. The crone has done it. Zanku has done it. Alchemists usually do it with a spell. Like Cody Piper, they can. Avatars, of course, can do it. Yeah, there's a couple different people that can do it. Self-resurrection is also possible with like the Lazarus demons, or because familiars have 9 lives, they can like come back again because they have 9 of them. So yeah, the OG P3 are back. Revisit the original Power of 3 with an all-new story from a time before Prue, Piper, and Phoebe knew they were charmed. Next-gen fans, parents, grandparents, and cool aunts and uncles can introduce young readers to Charmed. A story of sisterhood. Enjoy a timeless family tale of sisterhood mixed with magic. A secret herstory. A gay wrote this. This unknown adventure from the Charmed One's past reveals a secret herstory in their tale. Beautifully illustrated. See Charmed Ones in a whole new way with the vibrant original illustrations. Totally tubular tale. Set in the 1980s, this blast from the Charmed One's past is a retro adventure from a bewitching time. Cool. So let's get into it. Would you read us the inside cover, Tabitha?
You just call me Tabitha? Sure, Samantha, I will. They were the first sisters to be called the Charmed Ones. Prue, Piper, and Febois Halliwell were destined to become the most powerful witches the world has ever known. But before they were charmed, they were just 3 little girls living with their grams, and they had no idea of the power inside of them. The 80s weren't always radical, especially for 3 sisters who spent a lot of time on their own while their grams was off on mysterious outings. This is their way of being like grandma was getting banged.
She was entertaining men's, yes.
Yeah. Prue, on the verge of becoming a teenager, was saddled with the responsibilities of an adult. Febois was tired of being treated like the baby of the family, and Piper was annoyed that she was always stuck in the middle. When the girls' constant fighting threatens the future unity of the Charmed Ones, their magic awakens to send the 3 young witches on an adventure that could change their destiny forever. Is there a Wookiee in the house again? Or is some other kind of magic at play?
So we have the title page has like a little baby Phoebe looking opposite the book stand of the Book of Shadows. Cute. And then I'll do this double page, and then we'll go page by page and just read it. Literally read it. Okay. So we open on Halliwell Manor. Street, trees, and it says, the Halliwell Manor had been home to the same family for many years. It seemed just like all the other houses on a quiet street in San Francisco, but there are no houses there, apparently. But looks could be deceiving. And then we hear, Phoebe!
Well, you can kind of see the hint of a house on the one side.
Oh, you're right. I do. You're right, in the background. Good eyes.
Yeah. They just have a lot more room than we're used to in LA. I mean, San Francisco. Phoebe, the youngest Halliwell sister, was trying to read an old book she'd found in the attic. This upset her big sister Prue very much. Prue was in charge when their grams was not home. Prue reminded her sister that the number 1 rule in the Halliwell Manor was that the girls were not allowed to go into the attic. And we see cute little Phoebe looking at the book, and Prue being all bitchy with her finger up, like, no, no, no.
Yes. Phoebe didn't always follow the rules, and she hardly ever listened to her big sister. You're not my mom, she said. This made Prue angry. I'm like, ooh, bitch.
Right?
Their mom had passed away when Phoebe was very young. Their father had left too, and Prue was very traumatized by this. So now it was just the 3 Halliwell sisters and their grams. And we see Prue with her arms crossed, and Phoebe with they're doing death stares at each other while they're in front of the book. And we see a beautiful picture of Patty in the background.
Aww.
Obviously, this attic was cleaned a lot more in the 80s. Super clean. But, Grams was up there all the time, secretly, doing things. So it makes sense.
Yeah. So we see Phoebe and Prue are fighting, and Prue says, you're not supposed to be in here. And Phoebe's like, the door was open. And Prue's like, don't lie, the attic door is never open. And in the drawing, they're pointing at each other going, yes, it was. No, it wasn't. Yes, it was. No, it wasn't. Yes, it was. And then the sisters fought all the time. And then we suddenly see Phoebe jumping off of the box by the book, and she's like, can't catch me.
It's like a little monkey, a little chimpanzee over here.
Yeah.
And then the next page, we see the shouting brought Piper to the attic. Piper was the middle sister. She always felt like she was in the middle of her sister's fights, and she says, "Stop it!" as this book of shadows starts to fall off of the stand. And we have a "you look familiar" moment, Sean.
It's funny, she's so familiar to me, though. Reminds me of this old stray that used to hang outside my loft.
Familiars. That's what I'm looking for.
Have we met before? You look familiar.
I like to call this a fuck me daddy Satan moment.
That too. It is on the Balthazar page. Fitting enough that Phoebe's like, "Ooh, the Balthazar page."
I know, that's funny.
Yeah, this is before she defiled the book with her markers and stuff, because originally when the first Balthazar page appeared, it was in Sight and Scene and Primrose Empath. There was a Latin page on the opposite side. But then Phoebe's like, "Nope, I'm going to put Cole's picture here and remove everything around. Cover up that Latin." We don't speak that language anyway.
Yeah. The big book Phoebe had been reading was now floating in mid-air. And it's cute because for some reason, Piper's hands are up. So what's going on here? And the book is floating and there's like magic around it. And everybody's looking at it like, oh, what the heck?
Yeah. So, ooh.
Ooh.
And then we see Prue pick up the book and puts it on the stand, and the sisters are just looking at it. And it says, "Prue grabbed the book and carefully put it back in its place. She was thinking the same thing as her sisters, that the book was magical." They were right about that. But little did they know, when Piper threw her hands up and shouted, "Stop!" she had actually frozen time before the book could fall onto the floor. Yeah.
What?
Gasp.
Gasp. When the sisters gathered around the magical book, long-forgotten memories flashed into their minds. Prue and Piper immediately remembered something they'd forgotten years ago, back when Febois was just a baby. And all the girls are looking into the book like, oh, except for Piper is just like, yes, get it, book.
And then we see like the flashes of memories, and we see a younger Prue kind of playing telekinesis with a teddy bear, a purple bear. I wonder if it's the Princess Diana Beanie Baby. No, it's too early for that. But still,
yeah.
They remembered that they were witches. And then we see Piper like in the park with her hands together. She like throws a dog and a frisbee in the air in the park.
Weirdo.
Because these are kind of the looks they had for that 70s episode. So this had to be around 1974, 1975 when they're remembering, when they had powers. Yeah. Of course, they were very irresponsible in that episode. They're having them use the powers in the park while all these people were walking around. Like, there was everybody there. It was irresponsible, but still.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then we see a little picture of Patty holding little baby Phoebe, and she looks like a little who? Cindy Lou Who.
Dahum Dores.
Yes. Prue, Piper, and Phoebe were good witches, like all the other women in their family had been. It was their job to protect the innocent. Gramps had made them forget about their powers in order to keep them safe. But the moment the three of them touched the old book together, the girls remembered everything.
Yes.
My name is Alice, and I remember everything.
I remember everything. Resident Evil.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, more images appeared in Phoebe's mind, but these didn't feel like memories. She was certain that she'd never been to the place in her vision. It felt like a dream. And we see the three sisters hugging and all happy in some other place, Kevin. I wonder where this could be. Mm-hmm.
Phoebe described the magical place to her sisters, but she didn't understand what was happening. Piper explained that Phoebe had seen the future. That was her special power. It's cool that she knew that.
Yeah.
So Grams bound the power sometime after Phoebe was born, but they knew long enough, or were informed about about Phoebe's powers sometime before they were bound, for her to remember that.
Okay. Piper and Prue showed their little sister the powers they'd forgotten they'd hid. Look what I can do, says Piper as she's like floating a ball. And then Piper threw a glass orb into the air. It froze, just like the old book. Piper had stopped time. And Phoebe's looking at it like, where's the strings? I don't believe you.
She must have had grabbed one of Graham's crystal balls that was hanging around there or something. So like, where'd that come from?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Prue could move things without touching them. she used the magic to lift Phoebe up into the air. I love how they don't call it telekinesis because that's too big of a word for children, you know?
True.
So cool. And she goes, check this out, as she lifts Phoebe up into the air with her powers. And she's like, put me down, put me down. Now, initially, when I first read this, I had a problem with that, but I'll explain why I don't afterward.
Okay. I knew Kevin would say something about this moment. And I just noticed Phoebe's dressed like a minion.
Oh, yeah, she's got the colors. Yeah.
Yep.
She's got the overalls.
She originated the minions. Piper stepped between her sisters, hoping to stop another fight before it started. And we see Piper is grabbing Prue's butt, and she's saying, "Why did our powers come back?"
That is an odd drawing now that I think about it. You always notice these things.
I always notice them, though, like when we're talking about it. I didn't notice this when I read it yesterday.
Too funny. And then Phoebe looks a little Asian in the background. A little bit.
She does.
Prue thought about Piper's question. Why did our powers come back? I'm curious, too. I want to know. And she says, it must have something to do with Phoebe's vision of the future, she said. As Prue is kind of pacing in thought, Piper's like, I don't know. And then Phoebe's like sulking in the background going, my power stinks.
That's funny. I like that little detail.
Yeah.
Prue glared at her little sister. Phoebe had the same power that their mother had. To Prue, that was a wonderful gift. But Phoebe just complained that she couldn't do anything fun like her big sisters. And then Prue's like, oh, grow up. And then she's like, you grow up. And then Piper's like, you both should grow up. It became their worst fight ever. Ever.
Gasp. Yeah, so the next page, we see them all huddled together, fighting some more really nasty things. You are so ungrateful, so annoying. Stop it right now. I wish I was an only child. Little brat. I know you are, but what am I? I'm in charge. No, you're mean. So lots of shouting child expletives over here.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
They stopped fighting the moment a strange swirling circle of light appeared in the attic. Oh.
Portal. It says it tore the big book right out of Prue's hand, so it sucks the book in. But Prue, all she's holding on to, a page rips out of it, so she grabs at least a page, well, it flies out of her hands. And then it says, and made it disappear. And we see the Book of Shadows getting sucked up into the portal. I have a you look familiar moment here.
Oh.
Have we met before? You look familiar.
Do it.
It reminds me of when Abraxas sucked the Book of Shadows into his little portal right from the attic. Same kind of blue portal.
Wow. I like that we're referencing Paige right here.
What? Oh, because she grabs a page? There she is. I knew she was represented.
There's that old girl. Phoebe ran after the book. She disappeared too. And Piper's like, Phoebe, no! Piper chased after her sister. So now she's in the portal.
Yeah. Prue didn't rush into danger like her sisters, but she knew she couldn't leave them alone. She was in charge. So she just sat there staring at the portal for a little bit like, I don't know. Prue stepped through the portal because she realizes that her sisters are more important than safety right now.
Yeah. I'm just giggling at like her steps.
The way she's walking.
She's like a ballerina.
Ballerina.
I just imagine her like twirling into it.
Plie, pas de beret. Those are the words I know.
Oh. Okay. I know, what is it? Condu clothes?
Okay.
Clothes? I don't know what word that is. And into a magical world, unlike anywhere she and her sisters had ever been before. And Prue right away is like, we have to go home. And then we see Phoebe running. She's like, we have to find the book. So like Phoebe's taken to this strange world right away. And Piper and Prue are still like, what the fuck? Because this is like straight up Salvador Dali land. Like stuff is floating in the air. Like it's all kind of Dr. Seuss with strange shapes. Like it's a pretty cool place.
It's like abstract dreamscape space.
Yeah.
All those things. So then we see Piper went off to search for Phoebe. while Prue stayed behind trying to figure out a way back to the manor. Prue's like, let her go. And yeah, Piper's like, Phoebe, wait.
But Phoebe couldn't find the book, and Prue couldn't find the manor, and Piper couldn't find her sisters. They were all lost, and we see a picture of each one of them lost in their own way.
Aww.
Aww.
Phoebe was mad at herself for running off again. She knew it was dangerous, but sometimes her emotions took control. She calmed herself down and realized that there was a better chance of finding the book if she found her sisters first. And she's like, yeah, I'm thinking.
And I love this hint that, like, she can read emotions. She had emotions. Like, this is a cute little nod to that.
Yeah.
Just like our page nod a few pages ago
exactly.
on that page.
Exactly like that.
Piper was mad at both of her sisters. Prue could be so mean at times, but Phoebe did act out without thinking. Piper always felt like she was stuck in the middle. Now that she didn't know where they were, she missed them both terribly. Prue loved her sisters, but sometimes it was hard being the oldest. She had so many responsibilities now that their parents were gone. She didn't mean to take out her frustrations on Phoebe. She promised herself that when she found her sisters again, she was going to be nicer. But how would she find them?
Prue looked at the paper she held in her hand. A page had been torn out of the book when it was sucked into the portal. The moment she read the page, her sisters heard Prue's voice in their minds. And we see her look at the page, and it says, "The power of 3 will set you free." Just like what's on the back of the spirit board.
Oh. And we see a triquetra with the sisters in each of the legs of the triquetra, and it says, "The power of 3 will set you free." When they each spoke the words out loud, a bright light appeared, leading them back together once more.
Aww. Prue apologized for being so bossy. Phoebe said she was sorry for doing things she knew she wasn't supposed to do. Even Piper apologized. She said that she needed to be more patient with her sisters, especially when they weren't patient with one another. Forever the mediator. And they go, "I love you," as they hug together. So sweet.
Aww, so sweet. It felt good to be back together. It also felt familiar to Phoebe. It was the exact moment that she'd seen in her vision earlier. Full circle!
There we go. Yes. Phoebe reminded Prue and Piper about her vision of the future. That's right. Piper realized that the book had disappeared while they were fighting. Prue figured now that they had made up, they might be able to find the book. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's what Phoebe's vision had been telling them. They needed to work together as sisters to use their magic. That was the only way to get the book back and the only way to get home. And here's a new spell we haven't seen before.
Rhyme time.
Rhyme time.
Should we try a spell?
Why not? Let's try a spell.
In the wind, I sing this rhyme. Bring death before me, before my time.
You've really got to lay off the rhyming, Prue. Wonderful. Witty, but wordy.
I did the rhyme. I will do the time. Good night.
And they hold hands and they all say it together. The power of 3 will set you free.
Yeah. And that is another You Look Familiar moment.
Have we met before? You look familiar.
Because it's very reminiscent of the first episode, the first time they ever said the power of 3. And except Phoebe and Piper are flipped. They switched sides and flipped. And they're holding hands and saying the power of 3. There is a canonical error here, but I'm saving it till the end. So.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So the next page, it's really loud and big. The power of 3 will set you free. And then the spell brought the girls and the book back to the attic. It also made them forget everything that had just happened. And yeah, they're just back in the attic, light around them, and they're just smiling and happy.
Yeah. And then suddenly they look confused because they're looking around because they forgot about the big book. They forgot about their magic, and they completely forgot about being witches once again. The girls had returned to the normal lives their Grams had wanted them to have since she'd first made them forget about their powers. They didn't even know why they were in the attic, a place they were not allowed to be.
Yes. But something had changed. The girls weren't fighting anymore. They felt better together than they did when they were apart. It was long past Phoebe's bedtime, so they all climbed into bed, where Prue read to her sisters until Grams came home. And then they're all sleeping in one bed together. Prue's got a nice book open. Cute.
Ah. When Grams checked on them, she was surprised, but happy, to see the sisters finally getting along. She thanked She thanked Prue for looking after Piper and Phoebe and for reading them a bedtime story. Books can take you to magical places, Graham said, winky face. They can also teach you valuable lessons.
Yeah, interesting. Go books. This podcast with their books.
Yes.
Final page. As Grams closed the bedroom door, she wished the girls good night in the traditional way of the witches. Not words of the witches, but way of the witches.
Oh.
Blessed be. Yes.
He didn't want to pay you royalties.
Exactly. So it says, blessed be, and winky faces as she closes the door.
Ah.
The end.
The end.
So what do we think of this book?
So I think it's a really cute little way to introduce, children, our fans, to the sisters' powers and what they do. I like the lesson that it tells, like, Phoebe, like, if you're ever scared, just calm down. Like, don't be emotional. Like, think with your head. Like, we get to see a really good lesson for kids through each one of the sisters. Like, Piper being the mediator, Prue, like, having to be in charge and how it stresses her out. So I think this is a very well done book, Mr. Ruditis.
Yeah, reading this again, because the first time was just initial quick response, but I still think this is just a wonderful story for children and just fans of the show. People who love the show as when they're younger can have kids and bring it to their kids. It's especially great for children with siblings because I think every kid will have a sister they relate to or finds something they relate to in each of them. It's cute, it's wholesome. It's also very accurate to the sisters, more accurate than we've seen in the manga.
Stop it.
Because they all feel like themselves. This is their personality types. It works. It's also, very thought-provoking in ways. So, yeah, lots of great stuff. Yeah. I have some questions for you, though. We're thinking of things. I was thinking about things. Because thought-provoking for me as a fan, I'm like, okay, how would this happen? How does this make sense lore-wise now, right? So why do you think the powers came back?
So my hypothesis, Kevin, is that this was all orchestrated by Grams. Because in the end, when she says books can take you to magical places, I think that's her kind of giving us the hint that I did this. And the fact that she winks at the end, I think this was all carefully set up because she knew the sisters were being little bitches. And she purposely had them go on this adventure. And she re-erased their memories and powers.
Okay, and that was my first thought too after I read this. Well, I had a couple thoughts when I first read this. Now that I'm thinking about it, I do think Grams had a part to play in it, but I don't think she was as direct as as like casting the spell on them or doing anything directly. The only part I think she had in it was maybe intentionally leaving the door open. So let me follow this train of thought with me. Okay, so to understand how they got their powers back this time, we have to first understand how they got their powers back in the first episode. Okay, so Grab's death automatically should have unbound their powers from her dying, but it didn't because they all had to be together under the same roof with the book. It's because Phoebe was in New York and everything, they were separated. And then, technically, Phoebe coming home and being with her sisters, first meeting together, should have activated their powers automatically then, too, immediately. The chandelier should have glown just like when Paige first arrived. But it didn't happen then either. And you want to know why?
Why?
Because their relationship was estranged. They were in a very awkward, very agitated state in their relationship. And because their sisterhood bond wasn't really formed yet, it was reformed since childhood, they weren't ready to have their powers. Which is why the Dominus Trinus spell that Phoebe cast was needed to kind of force the process. So while all the elements were there for them to get their powers, but because of the relationship status, they didn't. So the spell is what brought it out forcefully. Get it? Mm-hmm. So I think that makes sense because that's the only time they ever said a spell to get the powers.
Yeah. I had the thought. I thought back to what's it called? That old 70s episode.
That 70s episode. Yeah.
or that 70s episode where Grams had the spell on the ring, it made me think, like, I wonder if she put a spell on the book, so if they ever did activate their powers, they would automatically, like, forget at the end.
I think just the book itself is emanating magic all the time because it's linked to their magic. It's linked to their bond as women and sisters. I think it's just a natural state. So she didn't even have to cast a spell, and I think it's just a natural state of the book. So yeah, I do believe the powers were returned here because they were so close to the book. Even with Grams alive, even with the minor bickering, because it wasn't like as bad as it was when the first episode. They're just childhood fighting at this point. But because they were close, I think the connection and their bond was strong enough still to unlock their powers there just because they were so close. Which is why they weren't always allowed in the attic, because Grams probably knew that if they got too close to this book, it would activate the powers and undermine her binding, you know?
Yeah.
So
Also, I like to think that this is probably a test. Like, Grams wants to make sure, like, if I die, this shit's gonna work.
Right. This is probably going to be around 1981, 1982. So Prue would be about 11, 12. Piper would be like, I can't do math. 9, 10, and then Phoebe like 7-ish. So, and this is after they visited in that 70s episode, and she learned that she was going to help deliver the charm, and she knew she was going to be dying. She didn't know when, but she knew she would die. Well, she kind of did know when because they said they just got them. So yeah, all these things were probably on her mind. So it would be a test.
Wow.
So yeah. And then I asked this question. Why do you think the book disappeared into another dimension?
I know you have a theory. I don't know. I still like to think that Grams probably set certain things up. I think she set trigger spells up to kind of make all this happen.
So me, I think back to when they fought in the series in Power Outage, in the Power of Three Blondes. I think this goes back to that Power of Three bond. Because in the past, well, I guess in the future, when the sisters were having intense animosity towards each other, and worse, if they used their magic on each other, like in Power Outage, the Triquetra on the Book of Shadows would split, and they would be cut off from the magic. You know, they would lose access to the powers. They would not have that bond, which is why they couldn't be formed to begin with, because they had that rift. So it all is connected. But this time, when they were fighting, I think the strain on the book and their bond caused it to flee into another plane, because they just got their powers. For them to fight immediately right after, it would be like too much overload. So it's like the book's like, this is too much. I gotta get out, and it just like just tried to escape into another dimension, another plane.
Yeah, and it is a nice detail that he said this is the worst fight they've ever had, so it triggered something more.
Mm-hmm. Right. Anything for canonical? Put that in my canonical hat.
Canonical.
Phoebe's empathy powers, nod to it. Winky face.
And just emotional, and she's always had that psychic sensory. So yeah, nice. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Balthazar.
Yeah, that counts for sure.
That's all I have.
Okay. I said the no other houses around them, but you did point out that house, just far off in the distance in the fog. The biggest canonical error is Phoebe's power is not the same as Patty's.
I thought that sounded weird.
Patty had the power to freeze time. Yeah. And I did notice that the first time too. But I think Paul got it wrong because he was thinking about when Patty was pregnant with Phoebe, she would get premonitions because of Phoebe's power. And that's why there was confusion.
Okay.
And then we had Prue and Piper remember having powers, and I thought that those pictures looked like them around the time before we got there in the 70s. I hinted at that I thought Prue using her powers on Phoebe was a problem because that would sever the Power of Three bond because you're not supposed to use your powers on each other. But Prue has used her power on Phoebe before. The only difference is if you use your powers on your sisters out of retaliation or anger, and she was not using her powers for this reason here. She was using it to demonstrate her powers and show it. Because Prue has flown Phoebe before, just not knowing she was her. She flew it across the room. She shot Phoebe across the fire with her power because Phoebe would levitate, and then Phoebe was like, a little help here, so she had Phoebe's consent, and then she like pushed her over the fire. So it's possible. It's just if you do it with malicious intent is what causes the rift. So it's okay here. All right. They hear each other with telepathic link across dimensions. And this is something that was introduced again in the comics and in Witch Trial as well. That's the power of one, the heightened version of the power of three, when they're on like a whole extrasensory wavelength, when they can talk to each other telepathically across different times and different and dimensions and stuff like that. So that's a cool use of the power of one and a good callback to the comics. Okay, here's another big one. They said the power of three will set you free. You free, not set us free.
But they're also saying it to each other, so they're being polite and saying you. There's 3 U's.
Nice try. Because the power of three will set you free was like the instructions. When they actually said the spell, they said the power of three will set us free. It should be us.
Okay, fine.
But because I told you, the power of three spell should only be effective in a dire situation, unpremeditated, and as an only resort. This situation actually qualifies because there are children lost in a dimension, not sure what to do with themselves. So it was completely, all those boxes were ticked. So it does make sense that it would work. Again, another part that works is the spell will perform literally whatever it needs to do to keep the sisters safe and protected. And this qualifies. It did exactly what it needed to do. It brought them back to the manor, and it also made them forget their powers, because the whole reason why their powers were bound in the first place was to keep them safe. Because if they had their powers, they would be in danger from Nicholas, who would kill them to get them, because he has immunity to the powers. And they haven't figured out a way to counter that yet. So it all fits. So I'm really happy with that.
Nice.
All right. What is the most valuable panel?
I think it has to be the one. I'm going to say this one with the triquetra and the sisters in it. As they're saying, the power of three will set you free. You, Kevin.
You. There are so many wonderful pictures in here. I put the ones of the three of them behind the Book of Shadows, standing behind the Book of Stand. Oh my god, standing behind the book stand. I think it's really pretty and it's really charmed to me. So
yeah. All right, now for the sexiest, right? We're doing this.
I don't have a sexiest this time.
Neither do I. Just Grams in the end, because she's so
Graham's
sexy.
wiki face. Yeah. I mean, the wiki face has implications, so there you go. What were you doing with your menses over there out in the distance? All right, tips for future white letters.
Oh, we're really just messengers? Guides? Think of us as guardian angels for good witches.
Tips for future white letters.
I was out being a force of good in the universe.
What is the moral in this? If there's ever going to be a moral of a story, this would be the book to have it. What would it be?
I think the overall moral is just love. Like, love those that you that are close to you, like friends or family, because that encompasses each of them. If they just remembered their sisterly bond, then it would have helped them control, Prue's anger, Phoebe's impulsiveness. That's what brought them all back to their grounding.
Beautiful. Yeah, mine is pretty much the same. Know that we all get angry and we may fight with family or friends, but that doesn't mean we don't love them. So try to remember how much you do love each other, especially when you're upset. I think that's a great lesson for our children and siblings.
I love you,
all
Kevin.
Right. I love you too. Oh my gosh. All right, so now we're at book ranking. Is this Magically Delicious, Pretty Witchin', A Sorcerer's Apprentice, Disenchanting, or Vanquishable?
I think it's magically delicious. It did everything it needed to. It gave us everything we needed from it. Go, Mr. Ruditis, go.
Yeah, I think it's really great. Even though it has some canonical errors that bother me, there's still a lot that it does right, and Paul does know the show. Not better than me, but he does know the show. So I'm going to give it a Magically Delicious as well. Yeah. All right, so we did it, Sean. Yay!
Yay!
So what's next is we're going to be doing The Harmed comics. Now, if you don't know what the Harmed comics were, we'll talk about those. They're a satirical comic strip that happened while the Charmed was still on the air, on the internet, and we're going to talk about them. Very hard to find these days, and it's just going to be a hoot and a half. I'm so excited.
And a half. Wow.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that later this week. Yeah. So in the meantime, where can we find you, Sean?
Find me on Instagram under Sean Perrette. You'll find links to everything there, including Witch's Brew.
Beautiful.
I have a mug, everybody, that you can see my mug. I have a mug, Witch's Brew coffee.
Next
Which
episode,
you can get on
I believe.
Threadless.
Yes. Next episode, I want to do a video version, so we'll record video next episode, so you can show it off then.
So I have to put on a shirt.
You don't have to. It's
Oh,
sexy
stop
time.
it.
It's Harmed. It's satirical. Do what you want. So, beautiful. You can find this podcast at Words of the Witches on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Words of Witches on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. And Words of Witches pod@gmail.com is our email. And yeah, you can see merch at wordsofthewitches.threadless.com. So I'm so excited. Next week, we're going to laugh like crazy. Until then,
Because we never do that.
Never. Your destiny still awaits. Bye.
Bye.